Hyrule, the land of heroes, divine royalty, and indescribable evil. Since the founding of the First Kingdom following the defeat of the Demon King Demise and the Interlopers, it has successfully repelled evil time and time again, thanks to brave knights and legendary heroes, the Links. Nevertheless, this is just one side of the story, as both in the Downfall and Adult timelines, the Kingdom of Hyrule has collapsed and declined numerous times. Still, in one branch, the divine line of the royal family and the First Kingdom of Hyrule has prevailed to this day through Gerudo and the Twilight invasions. We believe that this is about to change with The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild.
The disappearance of the Triforce resulted in the conclusive death of Ganondorf in the Child timeline, but Demise's and Ganondorf's combined hatred lived on as peace returned to the Kingdom of Hyrule. What followed remains to this day unknown, apart from the undisputable fact that the kingdom eventually declined and ended up in the era of Shadow. But as to what happened in the gap between the Twilight era and the Shadow era, it simply remains to this day a massive mystery in the Child timeline. So, where does Breath of the Wild come in here? That is why we are here, since if you look closely, you can see traces and connections to what was once a true empire over these lands.
We believe that after the presumed death of Ganondorf in the Twilight era, the liberated Kingdom of Hyrule continued to prosper, and with the new wealth could invest into the kingdom. It is in this time span that several of the decaying landmarks, such as the Great Bridge of Hylia, must have been rebuilt and restored, which explains the royal winged crest found at the southern gate of the bridge in the E3 trailer. The case of the Temple of Time, however, is a little trickier, so we will save this one for later on in the theory. But for now, let us take a deeper look at the most important structure of the kingdom and the seat of the royal line, Hyrule Castle. To begin with, here is Twilight Princess Castle as seen right after Midna's desperate hour and Zelda's sacrifice, and mere seconds before Ganondorf sealed the castle. And here for comparison is the castle under the influence of Calamity Ganon in Breath of the Wild.
As you can clearly see, everything from the central medieval keep, the attached spire at the top of it, the tiles, the connected defensive towers, and devious decorations match identically. This alone is a large step forward to pinpoint what period of time Breath of the Wild takes place in. Remember, the architecture of Hyrule Castle has, over the years, differed after each reconstruction in the 4 different timeline branches. Let's explain for a second. Hyrule Castle and the town in the center of Twilight Princess Hyrule are not the same castle and town that was found in Ocarina of Time. The proof for this notion is the fact that the ruins at the founding stone of the Kingdom of Hyrule, the Temple of Time, are found at completely different sites. The Sacred Grove a little southwest from Hyrule Field in the era of Twilight. And appropriately, the partially damaged and decaying temple can be found at the Great Plateau a little southwest from Hyrule Field. And to anyone who believes that this is just a coincidence, then explain why the neighboring ruins share a remarkable similarity to the street plan of Ocarina of Time's Hyrule Castle town, including the ruins of the first Hyrule Castle. Hint, it was destroyed during the Gerudo-Hylian War. And finally, the fountain in Castle Town's Market Square.
Speaking of fountains, Hyrule Castle Town in Twilight Princess did also have a massive one, crowned with the royal wing crest, while the surrounding market square was decorated with red gold banners and the royal crest in gold. You mean the same destroyed banners we saw flying in the ruined market square in the Game Awards trailer? Not exactly, since if you compare the banners and fountains, you will spot one but key difference: the symbol crowning the fountains. In the Twilight era, the royal crest can be seen on the banners in the market square, while the market fountain is crowded by a cut-off version of the wing crest. In Breath of the Wild, it is the wings that calls back to Goddess Hylia, and fittingly enough does not have the Triforce, as a goddess could not use it until her sacrifice and rebirth. Could it be that this is the personal symbol of the monarch as bloodline descendant to the divine Hylia? It looks like this might have been the case in the moment of Calamity Ganon's ambush.
That would make sense, as Breath of the Wild is the first major, non-remake, non-reimagining Zelda installment following Skyward Sword, where the character of Goddess Hylia was fully introduced after the tease of Lake Hylia in previous installments and the Great Bridge of Hylia in Twilight Princess. But back to the Market Square. as apart from the differences in the depicted crests on the ruined red gold banner and fountain, the brick stones and other details in the two squares are identical in both Twilight Princess HD and Breath of the Wild. But we still are not done with Castletown, far from it, as we need to remember the new trailer introduced new bird races or tribes that share a similar posture to the mysterious birds we saw carved beside Hylians on the walls and pillars of Twilight Princess HD's Castletown. Is this a mere coincidence? We don't think so, as the stone engravings were among many things that were replaced from Twilight Princess to Twilight Princess HD.
Seeing that series producer Mr. Eiji Aonuma hinted that there will be "oh, I see" moments when playing Breath of the Wild after Twilight Princess HD, it is probable that the carved birds and Falco here have something in common. And if you thought these were Rito, then you are wrong, since in both cases the birds have no hands or lips. But what else could give us "oh, I see" moments? Perhaps the return of town halls or mayor's houses in villages, and obviously the Wolf-Link amiibo, which brings Wolf-Link, the shadow form of the hero of Twilight, to Breath of the Wild as a trusty companion. It speaks for itself that summoning him in this form, with the same amount of hearts that you left the Cave of Shadows with, would not be possible if Breath of the Wild took place prior to Twilight Princess. So far, it appears we are on a clear path to confirm that Breath of the Wild is in the child timeline and a sequel to Twilight Princess. But what about the decayed Master Sword being located in a different place, the importance of the Sheikah, the Guardians, the technology, and the Koroks who are present in the game?
Under any circumstance, they would not fit into the child timeline, except they do. Since we need to ask ourselves, what is Hyrule in present time in Breath of the Wild? It is a declined, non-existing kingdom, a ruin. And what happens each time the kingdom meets its downfall in the Zelda series? The land changes to the unrecognizable. We have seen this numerous times in the Downfall timeline and the adult timeline in the past. The child timeline, on the other hand, has gotten away from radical declines. Yes, Ocarina Castle Town and Castle were ruined during the Gerudo-Hylian conflict, but the Kingdom of Hyrule prevailed, built a new seat, and expanded its territory at the expense of the Gerudo. Another thing worth noticing is that the child timeline is as well the only branch where the three most significant races, Gorons, Hylians and Zoras, have maintained mutual relations of respect and harmony, well supported by the local Sheikah in the shadows.
In other words, after many complaints after Twilight Princess being simply an Ocarina 2.0 that didn't take enough risk with the land of Hyrule, the Triforce, and Link himself, Eiji Aonuma, as the creator of all significant installments in the child timeline, might have had the will to shake things up and create a new and interesting setting and plotline in the most conservative uniform, but at the same time, the darkest and most mature timeline branch in the Zelda series. He wants to leave a lasting impact and legacy on the child timeline prior to the possible retirement from the position as series producer after the launch of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. With it is finally time to give a perspective on what could have happened to Hyrule after the defeat of Ganon, the destruction of the Mirror of Twilight, and the Master Sword being left to rest in the Sacred Grove.
Peace returned to the Kingdom of Hyrule following the presumed death of Ganondorf/Ganon, and despite gloomy expectations for the declining Sheikah tribe, a new revival of their culture and commitment to the royal family could have resulted in a re-emergence of the tribe, which once again since the era of the sky and the banishment of the interlopers came in touch with ancient technology by re-establishing bonds with the descendants of the Loftwings, the Uka, who could have returned back to the surface from the city in the sky. The Uka, as the oldest remaining evolution line, could have brought the origins of Hyrule and Goddess Hylia back to the table, leading to the second realization of Princess Zelda and her line being the bloodline descendant of the goddess. As a result, a new symbol, the Dual Wings, could have been adapted as the Divine Zelda's personal crest to replace the Royal Wing Crest, though it appears the original crest and the Knight's Crest were kept alongside, as they do as well appear in Breath of the Wild.
The Sheikah remained in secrecy, but over time the Uka could have evolved to a more bird-like form while maintaining their great intelligence and technology. Combined with the two tribes with their military skills and technology, could have brought Hyrule to new heights with wonderful innovations such as the highly advanced shrines, guardians, and the giant mechanical flying bird seen in the Game Awards trailer. As previously mentioned, we think it must have been in this time span that the reconstruction of the Temple of Time and the Great Bridge of Hylia were carried out to celebrate the destruction of evil and restore the kingdom to its former glory. But peace is just a temporary state in Hyrule, as a new threat was about to strike the land following what could have been the resurrection of Ganon's spirit. And, as stated by the old man at the Great Plateau,
"That is the calamity Ganon. It brought ruin and corruption to the kingdom of Hyrule 100 years ago. It appeared suddenly, destroying everything in its path. leaving countless innocents in its wake.
Demise's curse struck back with a vengeance against the Kingdom of Hyrule, and with a new threat, a new Link was destined to pull the Master Sword and confront the evil. Nevertheless, Calamity Ganon was a different beast than Ganondorf or Ganon, and corrupted the Guardians' technology and the land itself. As a result, Link lost in the divisive confrontation, the Kingdom of Hyrule collapsed, and if it weren't for the Sheikah's intervention and sealing trap against Calamity Ganon and Hyrule Castle, then surely the entire land would have fallen. Shocked by the sight of a fallen hero, the Sheikah quickly put him into a long stasis in the Resurrection Shrine and realized that they cannot remain in the shadows with the seal set on Calamity Ganon. As a result, it is probable that the Sheikah, along with what appeared to be this era's Zelda, must have devised a plan where they both would take a more active role to ensure that Link's second quest would be a victorious one. But one action had to be done to avoid any setbacks when the seal on Calamity Ganon would eventually weaken. His memory had to be erased in order to prevent Link from being tormented by his past life. The damaged Master Sword was left to rest and slowly decayed in the Lost Woods, while the Temple of Time and the ruins of Ocarina of Time's Castle Town with the Shrine of Resurrection could have been brought up to safety by either the use of technology or divine power. With their labors complete, the Sheikah monks retreated to their many shrines and waited there for the return of the hero. With no one left to guard or protect the land, the rest of Hyrule was surely taken back by the wilderness.
Just like in the adult and downfall timelines, it is probable that this sudden end to the civilized kingdom led to greater consequences to the eco-balance and tribes of Hyrule. We don't yet know what happened to the Gorons or Zoras, but we suspect that the Kokiri, though not visible in Twilight Princess, like in the adult timeline, eventually took the form of Koroks to hide from Ganon's minions in these great times of trouble. The monster takeover of Hyrule could have resulted in a de facto downfall of Hyrule on a similar scale to the one seen following the imprisoning war and the downfall timeline, which would explain many similarities Breath of the Wild shares to the many decline locations in the downfall timeline. But what about the sea salt and the ancient sea and the Sheikah Slate? Well, Breath of the Wild has a massive sea to the east, and same goes with Four Swords Adventures at the end of the Child timeline. On top of that, as you may remember, we had the ancient sea from Skyward Sword and the oasis and the desert colossus of Ocarina of Time. This goes a long time back.
Was it Impa who crafted it? Was it used by Link in his failed quest as hinted in the description, a mysterious tablet with a glowing center? You've never seen this device before, and yet, there's something familiar about it. Or perhaps it was crafted afterwards, as we cannot see any traces of it in these two likely flashback scenes from the Life in the Ruins trailer. And most importantly, was it ordered by Zelda to communicate to Link during his first quest, or added while he was in stasis? These questions deserve a proper answer that we will give right after Christmas, but prior to the new year. For now, we can say that with changes such as these we have just envisioned, or something else with the same result, it is apparent that Eiji Anima's greatest goal with Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is to leave a lasting mark on the franchise, including an incredible tale that could turn upside down on the branch that has, as the only branch, sustained the well-known setting from Ocarina and Twilight Princess that we have all clenched so hard to and refused to leave. Well, if we don't do it, then they are doing it by destroying this setting once and for all, throwing the ruins in our face and telling us straight out that it is time to move on for the Zelda franchise and the timeline. Indeed, no kingdom, no memories, the only thing that remains for Link in this alien and ruined Hyrule is hope. Thank you for watching.
And that is our theory. If you liked this theory, then please give a like and please comment, since we want to see your thoughts and opinions on our theory, and what you believe is the timeline placement of the game, and most importantly, if you haven't already, then subscribe to the Commonwealth Realm for more Inside Zelda Breath of the Wild theories and Nintendo Switch videos.